Before heading to the video, if you haven't subscribed the channel, do subscribe it and don't forget to click the bell icon for the latest update notification. If you like the video, do like, comment and share. Stay tuned with learnbay.co. Happy learning!
So before jumping here, can anyone tell me like what do you understand from these two words? Point estimate and interval estimate. Any idea or anything that comes to your mind before I explain? Anything, it could be right or wrong.
Confidence interval.
Yeah, confidence interval. Anything else? So let's say if I ask you this question, right? So uh, let's say if you're not sure about this. So let's say, yeah, let me ask you this. So let's say the question that I'm asking is like what time, let's say what time does, what time does the class start? Okay, so let's say if I ask you this question, what time does the class start? So you can give me multiple answers, right? So someone can give me an answer like, let's say this is A1, so our first answer, right? So let's say someone says, Money, it is 8 o'clock, right? So let's say 8 o'clock. Someone says that, no, sometimes it is 8-1 or 8-2. Let's say if I write 8-2 here. Now someone who is smart comes up and says, no, it should be between 8 to 8-5. And with 95% confidence. Right? So what it means, so let's say this is a question that you have. So what time does the class start? So generally before when we used to go to class, so let's say there is traffic and all that, right? So let's say in the live classroom. So it is very challenging to sometimes come always at 8 o'clock, right? So sometimes it might be 8-2, sometimes it might be 8-10 also. Sometimes if there is a lot of traffic and all that, right? So let's say if I ask you this question, right? So keeping those factors in mind, so someone can give you an answer, let's say 8 o'clock, right? So someone can give you an answer that is 8-2, right? So someone can also give you an answer, something like it should be between 8 o'clock to 8-5, and I'm 95% confident, right? So among these, which one is a better option?
A3.
Right?
A3.
Right?
A3.
Yeah, so this is your point estimate, right? So this is your point estimate. This is also your point estimate, but this is your interval estimate. Okay, so that is the basics, right? So point estimate is like you're saying Money 8-3 or 8-5 or something like that, right? So that's fine. That's not a wrong answer, but then you might not hit that most of the times, right? You might think that, okay, since the class is supposed to be start at 8 o'clock, you have to start at 8 o'clock, but sometimes maybe laptop is not working, or let's say many other reasons come into picture, right? So in real life, so of course I'm supposed to start at 8, but sometimes it might be 8-1 or 8-2 or sometimes 8-5 also, right? So that is how in general is, right? So it's a good idea, or you would say that this is where your most of the chances are. And what does this mean? So this means that when you give this answer, right? So let's say if there are 100 classes, so let's say there are 100 classes, okay, 95 times, 95 times, okay, 95 times my starting time is between this interval. So 95 times, so let's say 95 times the values are, let's say 8-1, okay, so 8-2, 8-1, let's say 8-3, 8-1, let's say 8-5, 8-1, like that 95 times. Remaining 5 times, let's say something went wrong with my laptop or I woke up late or something like that. So let's say if I start at 8-10, okay, let's say if I start at 8-6, right? So these are the 6 or 5 times that I made a mistake. So what this 95% confidence means that the real parameter. So what is the real parameter? The parameter here is the starting time. So the parameter is basically the starting time. So when does the time class start? So the starting time. So this falls under this in this interval 95 times out of 100. So remaining 5 times it might be, let's say if I start at 7:55 also, that is not falling in this interval. So let's say if I start somewhere very early, let's say 7:55, then also the starting time is not within this interval, right? So but majority of the time I'm confident, let's say 95% of the time I'm confident money that you will start the class between 8 a.m. to 8:05 a.m., right? So this seems like a more this seems like a more closer and more complete answer to this particular question than this answer or any other answer you give, right? So let's say, okay, so this is where your point and interval estimates are, right? So we'll discuss more where we will use this and how we will use this, but I hope that you guys got the basic idea, right? What is a point estimate and interval estimate? Okay, so this is more theory. I don't think there is any practicals on this. So in statistics, this is again comes under your inferential statistics. So inferential statistics is you're trying to infer some information about your population with the help of the parameters of your sample. Okay, so we discussed sampling techniques, we discussed CLT, central limit theorem, we discussed normal distribution, we discussed standard normal distribution. So after that, we are discussing point estimate and interval estimate. So we'll use those concepts again now. Okay, in statistics, estimation refers to the process by which one makes inferences about a population based on the information obtained from a sample. Okay, so point estimate versus interval estimate. Statisticians use sample statistics to estimate population parameters. Okay, for example, sample mean are used to estimate population mean. Okay, so I hope you guys remember the discussion that we had. So let's say this is your population of Bangalore. Okay, generally we try to take a sample. Okay, so this is a sample. So what we want to answer the question is the average salary of a person in Bangalore. Average salary of a person in Bangalore. Okay, in Bangalore. Okay, so for that, typically I have to go and ask all the people here, let's say like collect their salaries, all the people in Bangalore, and then sum them, divide by the total number, then I'll get the average salary. But instead of that, I'll use statistics, and then I'll draw a sample which actually represents as much as possible. So let's say as much as possible here. Okay, then this sample will have a more or less close answer to the real answer. So let's say the real answer is, let's say the average salary of people in Bangalore is, let's say if you take 30,000, okay, 30,000 per month. So 30,000 per month. Okay, this is the real answer. Had you gone and calculated all that. Okay, now let's say this is your population mean. So this is your mean. Now what is the sample mean? Sample mean is, let's say if it comes out around to 28. So 28K per month. 28 and 29 we can take actually. So 29,000 per month. Okay. Now with this we can approximately estimate, okay, money around 29. Better than that, you can estimate saying that money it is between 25 to 30. 25K to 30K. Okay, 25K to 30K. With how much confidence? Let's say you'll say with 90% confidence. Okay, 90% confidence, right? So this is your point estimate. Okay, this is your point estimate, and this is your interval estimate. Okay, keep in mind with interval estimate, I'm also giving you confidence associated around with that. Okay, so that is a simple example. Okay, so for example, sample means are used to estimate population means. Okay, so this might be very boring. So an estimate of population parameter may be expressed in two ways. Point estimate. A point estimate of population parameter is a single value of a statistic. Okay. For example, the sample mean X is point estimate of the population mean mu. Interval estimate. An interval estimate is defined by two numbers. between which the population parameter is set to lie. For example, A less than X less than B is an interval estimate of population mean mu. It indicates that the population mean is greater than A but less than B. Okay, so that's what we have discussed so far. Now, this is your point estimate and interval estimate. Now, let's come to your confidence intervals. Okay, statisticians use a confidence interval to express the precision and uncertainty associated with particular sampling method. Okay, a confidence interval consists of three parts: confidence level, a statistic, and a margin of error. Okay, so what are confidence intervals? So confidence intervals are made up of three things. So one is your statistics, one is margin of error, and confidence level. So confidence level, what is the statistics? Let's say mean or whatever, and the margin of error. So what is the margin of error that you have? So let me show you an example so that you guys will understand.
One thing that is we have to estimate point estimate and the interval estimate. So the confidence level is used only for the interval estimate.
Yeah. So point estimate doesn't have any interval, right? So you can directly say that is, you can say point.
No. The point estimate doesn't need any confidence level.
Yeah. Point estimate generally you don't have any confidence associated with it.
Okay.
No, what is the question? I didn't understand.
No, actually, why it doesn't need the confidence level? If interval needs the confidence level, then point estimate should have some confidence level.
How does it make sense? So let's say if I say the point estimate of mean is 80.3. Okay, so in real life it is 81 or let's say whatever. With let's say 95% probable, let's say 95% confidence. So what does it mean? What about remaining 5 times? I'm trying to understand, like from your point of view, how does this sentence make sense? How can we interpret that? Because I've explained the interval estimate, right? So let's say this is your interval estimate. So if you remember the starting time of the class that I've explained, so if I come to class 100 times, 95 times I am in this interval and 95 times I'm out of this. So that makes sense. Here, how does it make sense? So let's say if I go back to the same problem.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, there is no variability, right? So probability. So this is confidence interval is probability, right? So see, in simple terms, so there should be some variation or there should be some variability, right? So here you're exactly pinpointing that money. This is what 8 p.m. you have to sharp start the class. You should not start at any other time because it is 8 to 10. But in real life, it is sometimes it might be 8:1 or 8:2, right? So that is the variability. So better, how do you better capture that variability is within an interval, right? So now what happens with interval is, so now, yeah, so let me explain a different situation. So let's say if I give you interval of, let's say if I give you interval of 8:1, so if I start the class from 8 a.m. till 8:1, okay, this is also interval, correct? Now the confidence will go down because this is a very small interval, right? So I'll say, Mani, you'll start the class between 8 a.m. to 8:1 with, let's say 50% confidence or 50. I hope you guys are getting right. So this is a very small interval, right? So sometimes I might take 2-3 minutes to start the class, right? So this is like a very, very small interval. At the same time, if you remember, I will start the class between 8 to 8:05, 8 to 8:05. Okay, 8 to 8:05 with, I told 95% confidence. So what it means is most of the times I will make sure that I start my class within first 5 minutes, right? Does it mean I will not start after 5 minutes? Yeah, sometimes it might happen that I will start after 5 minutes also, but it is like little bit less. The probability of that is less, right? Now you might say that, Mani, you can say that 8 to 8:10. This is also an interval, right? So 8 to 8:10 with 99% confidence. So what does it mean? That out of 100 classes, 99 times it should be between this, because after 10 minutes, it's like quite late for all of us, right? So let's say there is some big problem like internet is not working or something like that, then only I think this might happen. It's a rare situation where class will not start between this interval. So this is also interval estimate. Okay, so this is also interval estimate. This is also interval estimate. This is your point estimate. So what point estimate means that every other time I started after, let's say 8.1 or 8.3 or 8.4 or 8.6, all of those are wrong answers, right? So your estimation was wrong on the population. So that is what this doesn't have anything attached with that. But this has, because you can clearly see as you flex or as you decrease your interval, this actually parameter also gets affected, right? So when you give 8 to 8.1, I don't think you can say 95% confident, because of course the interval is very small and there is a very high chance that I might start at 8.2 or 8.3 or 8.5. Is it clear now?
Yeah, it is clear. So the interval, the more large is the interval, then the confidence level is high.
Yeah. So, but you should not make it more large also. It doesn't make sense, right? So let's say if I ask you, if you give me interval of 8 to 8.20, right? So 8 a.m. to 8.20 with 100% confidence, a sort of, yeah, I know that, but that doesn't give you a lot of useful information. That's like stating the obvious, right? So more or less, you guys will understand. Let me give you some examples. You guys will understand. Okay, so this is your confidence interval. So confidence interval is composed of three things: confidence level, statistic, and margin of error. So the confidence level describes the uncertainty of sampling method. Okay, so there is a sampling method in between, don't forget. So we are doing this for a sample and estimating it back to your population. Okay, the statistic, can you guys describe, can you guys tell me what is the population and sample in case of the class starting time? So I've explained I've explained the question, right? So what is the population and sample in case of the exam, in the question that I have given? So what time does the class start? What is the population? What is the sample here?
Sample is the subset of population.
Okay. What is the population? Sample is subset. Yeah, that's fine.
Population will be the overall time limit starting on the time.
Sorry, overall time limit.
Yeah.
I think a list of all the classes taken, about what time, the time of the classes taken.
Correct. So
for
that
entire.
correct. So the population is, you can define in multiple ways. So let's say list of all the starting times that I have taken. Let's say I have taken, let's say 10 classes or 15 classes. Okay, let's say 15 classes I have taken so far. So if you guys have collected my starting time, let's say 8, right? So population 8, 8.1, 8.1, 8.2, 8.1, 8.1, 8.1. This is your 15. Now what is your sample? You take, let's say last 3 days, or let's say randomly 3 days, or every third day or something like that. So you'll end up with, let's say every fifth day or something like that. So you end up with a 3. So that is your sample. Okay, is it clear? So what we are doing is we are looking at these sample times, or basically the starting times of this. So let's say if you get values like 8, okay, 8 a.m., 8:03 a.m., okay, 8:03, and 8, let's say 8, again 8 or something like that. Okay, using this, you are inferring back to this population. Okay, you're only looking at these 3 values. You can go ahead and then tell, Mani, we have remaining, let's say 60 classes or something. So I'm going to come up with the interval estimate, something like this. So you are given the what inference that I've done here. So I saw your classes starting time for 15 times. I've defined that as my population. I took a sample of 3 classes or 4 classes. I've got my interval. So this is basically, let's say 8. Okay, let's say 8. 8 a.m. is the starting time, and 8:05 is, let's say, maximum you will make late. Let's say the maximum 5 minutes you are late. And I'm going to infer it for the population. So next 60 classes, Mani, I'm 90% confident. So let's go with 90% confident that you will start the class for the next 60 classes between this interval estimate. Right? So this next 60 classes have not happened, but you're able to infer it with the help of these 2 points. So this is your population and this is your sample. And with this, you can estimate or infer this information. Okay, so with this, you're able to infer something for the future also. I hope you guys are able to connect the dots here. Okay, so these are all the class starting times that are already done. So these are the 3 samples that you have taken. Of course, you can ask Mani, why don't you take the 15? But let's say I've been taking class for, let's say, 1,000 days. So then you don't want to take 1,000, right? So you can work on this sample, a smaller data subset, and then come up with the interval estimate. And this will give you a guiding principle saying that 90% of the times Mani is going to start the class between 8 a.m. to 8:05 a.m. Okay, so this is the theory behind this, but there are some formulas that you guys can use to come up with more precise answers. So let me do some examples so you guys will understand. Okay, the confidence level describes the uncertainty of sampling method. The statistic and the margin of error define the interval estimate that describes the precision of the method. Okay, so there is uncertainty and there is precision. Okay, precision is basically how many times it is correct. Uncertainty is you don't know, like between which value it will come up. So that's why you're giving a range of values. Okay, the interval estimate of a confidence interval is defined by the sample statistic plus or minus margin of error. Okay, for example, suppose we compute an interval estimate of a population parameter. Okay, population parameter. We might describe this interval estimate as 95% confidence interval. So this means that if we use the same sampling method to select different samples and compute different interval estimates, the true population parameter would fall within a range defined by the sample statistic plus or minus margin of error 95% of the time. So is this sentence clear to all of you? So this means that if we use the same sampling method to select different samples and compute different interval estimates, the true population parameter would fall within a range defined by sample statistic plus or minus margin of error 95% of the time. Is this sentence clear? What does confidence interval give you? Any questions, any doubts? So there are 3 things, guys, here. Confidence level, statistic, a margin of error. So let's see an example, you guys will understand. So confidence intervals are preferred to point estimates because confidence intervals indicate the precision of the estimate, okay, the uncertainty of the estimate. Okay, the probability part of confidence interval is called confidence level. Okay, the confidence level describes the likelihood that a particular sampling method will produce a confidence interval that includes the true population parameter. Here is how to interpret a confidence level. Suppose we collect all possible samples from a given population and compute confidence intervals for each sample. Some confidence intervals would include the true population parameter, others would not. Okay, a 95% confidence level means that 95 of those intervals contain the true population parameter. A 90% confidence level means 90 of those intervals contain population parameter and so on. Okay, so any questions, any doubts? I think it should be pretty straightforward, right? So in a confidence interval, the range of values above and below the sample statistic is called the margin of error. For example, suppose a local newspaper conducts an election survey and reports that the independent candidate will receive 30% of the vote. Okay, so there is a newspaper and you're doing election survey and independent candidate will receive 30% of the votes. Okay, the newspaper states that the survey had a 5% margin of error and a confidence level of 95%. Okay, so these findings will result in the following confidence interval. Okay, we are 95% confident that the independent candidate will receive between 25% and 35% of the vote. Okay, so what is the statistic here? The statistic is percentage of the vote, so which is given as 30%. Okay, what is the margin of error they told? Margin of error they told is 5%. Okay, now I'm going to come up with a confidence interval, so which is given as 30% Okay, 30% plus or minus margin of error, which is 5. So which will come up to an interval which is 25%. Okay, 25% till 35%. Okay, 25% till 35%. Okay. Now what they have also mentioned, their confidence level is 95%. So what this means is, so this interval, so 95%, 25 to 35% of the votes. So this independent candidate will receive the vote in this interval with 95% confidence level. 95% confidence level. So this is how you can interpret such type of problems. Now let's say if you go back to this answer, so let's say if you go back 30% or 31% or 32%, there is a chance that you might not hit that most of the time. So it is a good idea to give an interval estimate with some confidence level associated with that. So this seems like a fair answer. So he might get 28%, he might get 30 or 31 or 32, anything is fine, right? So unless he fails or unless he loses the election completely, where he'll get 20%, or let's say, or he actually is the sole candidate and he wins complete election, let's say 38%. Except those two rare situations, in most of the realistic situations, the percentage of votes will fall in this category, like 26% or 28 or 31. So that's why this 95% confidence level. Is it clear, guys? Any questions on this? So what is a point estimate? What is a interval estimate? What is your confidence level? What does it signify? What is your margin of error? And what is your statistic here? So the statistic is the percentage of votes. The margin of error is given as 5%. The interval estimate is this one. And the confidence level is given as this one.
How do you arrive at 95%, that number?
How do you arrive?
Yeah. How do I say that 95% is my confidence level? Because it could be, because, is there a formula to calculate that, or like how is that?
There is no formula. This is more like a discussion type of thing. So 95%, how do you come up with that? So maybe you can see previous elections data and then say that, okay, 95% of the time this guy got, let's say there are 5 elections and most of the times he got that. So that's more like a, how do I explain? So that's more like a given in the question or something like that. So it's more like a MCQ question you can expect here. You don't go in real life and then find out the confidence level like that. So most of the times, this is the type of question you can expect from this. More like these are the things that are given to you. Can you find the remaining ones? So you can sometimes also assume 94% or 90% confidence interval. Sometimes they also assume this confidence level. So this is more like assumption than you going out and actually calculating, okay, so out of 100 times I got 90, so my answer is 90% confidence. I hope I answered your question. So this is more like an MCQ question you can expect. So in real life, you don't actually go outside and then figure out the confidence level.
Sure, thanks.
So there is one more MCQ that will make it clear. So many public opinion surveys report interval estimates, but not confidence intervals. They provide the margin of error, but not confidence level. So to clearly interpret survey results, you need to know both. We are much more likely to accept survey findings if the confidence level is high, 95%, than if it is low. Okay. So let's say if I am like a political analyst or something like that. So let's say I come up with saying that the party A, let's say the party number A is going to get, let's say 30 to 40% percentage of votes in India, let's say India, and that's all. I don't give any much more information. So given that we have learned all those things, it is going to be, for us, it should be like a question mark. So you should also ask the political analyst, what is your confidence? What is your confidence level? Okay, what is your confidence level? How much confident are you that this political party A in India will get this much percentage of votes in, let's say, 2021 election or something like that? Okay. So normal public, anyone who doesn't know about confidence level will simply say that, oh yeah, this party is getting 30 to 40% votes. I think these guys are going to win. So let me invest in stocks or something like that, right? So as a statistician or as a statistics student who understands these two concepts, so it is always important to understand the confidence, the interval estimate along with your confidence level. Okay, so we need to know both. Okay, so let's say if he comes back, the political analyst comes back and says that I am 50% confidence, I am 50% confident that this is the interval estimate for the percentages of votes for political party A, then you can disregard his study or analysis that, okay, 50% is very less. I don't think this is something to follow or accept. Let's say some other party or some other political analyst comes up with saying that the percentage of votes is basically from 35 to let's say 40%, and I'm 95% confident, or let's say 90% confident. So they have done some statistical analysis and study, and they came up with this confidence. So I will regard, or basically I'll keep in consideration this political analyst answer, right? So because his confidence interval, confidence level is very high. So even though this is giving me an interval estimate, unless I know the confidence level, this study is of no use. Okay, so if someone comes up with this answers, most of the times if you look at media and all, they don't give you any confidence level. They'll just say that this. So to clearly interpret survey results, you need to know both. We are much more likely to accept survey findings if the confidence level is high than if the confidence level is low. Okay, so I think there is a question or something there.
Mani?
Yeah.
Just had a doubt. Like, if a person says that he's 95% confident, like his confidence level is 95%, how is that we can blindly believe that person? Like, without knowing, like as you said, some political analyst will do his analysis and say that he's 95% confident. Then how is that we can blindly believe that person that yes, he has done it correctly and he has a confidence of 95%? It can be different, it can be lesser also, right?
Yeah, that is coming back to his personal, do you believe his person or not? So let's say if let's say Indian Statistical Institute comes up with saying that let's say the average age of COVID-19 suspects is, let's say, 32, 35 years, and we are 95% confident. Now, will you believe that ISI study?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it dependent on ISI and the person, right? So that has nothing to do with statistics actually. So it that's a different question altogether actually. So in my opinion, so. But what you have to remember or understand here is, so even ISI also doesn't come up with saying that not only ISI, most of the statistical surveys or anything that you see out there, generally they don't come back with the confidence level. Generally they say that drinking coffee is good for age group of, let's say, 20 to 30 or something, like some random study they'll do, right? So now coming back to your accountability, the question is accountability. So which one is accountable? Is the person A, is he biased? Is he towards left or right or center or whatever? Now that comes to your accountability, but both of them will give you the statistics, right? So accountability is something very dependent on the person or the institution. Let's say you can say that some institution is favoring that party or some institution is not favoring that party. That also happens in real life. If you see some studies, let's say some political analysts or some news channels will say on that side that this is the percentage of whatever unemployment or something, and the other ones will project in different way, this is the GDP growth or something like that, right? So there is no credibility actually. So that is credibility, what you're asking for is. But both of them will give you some interval estimate. At the same time, they should also give you the confidence level associated with that. Okay, people generally forgo or ignore that fact. So I can come up and say that the average salary in Bangalore is between 20,000 to, let's say, 40,000. Now people will be like, oh wow, nice, so I can get 35,000 or 40,000. But whoever is familiar or whoever understands or wants to question me better, we'll ask how much percentage are you confident? I'll say I'm 50% confident. Then you'll be like, okay, his study should be disregarded, right? So 50% is like very less chance. But let's say a company like Glassdoor, or let's say some HR company comes up, says that the average monthly salary in Bangalore is, let's say, 20,000 to fairly, let's say 30,000 for a beginner, right? So 20, 15, let's give 18,000 to 20, 25,000, and they are 90% confident. So you'll be like, okay, this seems like accountability is, you can go, if you are like my friend, you will say that money is always right, then let's go with him. So, but my confidence level is less. So both of us are wrong in that situation. But let's say if you want to go with accountability and confidence level, then you will say that, okay, the HR institution has given that 90% confidence. And I know that they have seen a lot of salaries of Bangalore people, may not be all the salaries, but I feel that they have a good sample and they have done good statistics. So then we can say that, okay, let me go with this guy. So this interval seems like that. So I can base my rent and study and lifestyle based on that interval. Let's say you're going to UK, right? How will you figure out how much money you will get, right? So there is no way. So there you will go to Glassdoor, or you'll go to companies websites like PayScale and all that. Now what will they give? So this is a good application actually. They will also give you that PayScale. Yeah. So if you guys see this, I don't know how many people know this. So statistics is everywhere actually, as and when you keep on looking for it. So I don't know how many people know this, but you can actually look for a software engineer. So let's say by job title or skill. Let's say if I write software engineer. Okay, so they're giving you what is the scale, and what are the bigger companies, who is paying more, and what is the range, right? So 50,000 to 104. So you can ask PayScale, like, how come you came up with this interval estimate, right? So are you 90% confident, or how much percentage are you confident? As you can see here, right? So let me change it to Bangalore. Now, if you see here, they came up with a very long interval. Can you guys tell me why? Can anyone tell me why is this interval so long? Like the salary is 50,000 to 104. Let's take yours only.
You not mentioned experience or something?
Yeah, so years of experience is important, right? So let's say if you take entry level. Now it has smaller down. I mean, it has become less now, right? So it means that they have done some good analysis, and this interval seems more fair and accountable. Okay, so profit sharing, bonus, bonus starts from $500 to $10,000. So as you can see all this. Now, if you want to see why this interval is affected in this manner, I think this shows the majority of the side. So you can see here, so the companies are paying on an average 60,000, 80,000, 90,000. There are some companies paying a lot of money.
The right side one is the confidence level, is it?
No, right side one, I don't know. What is it? I'm assuming that the majority of the people are in that side, like the maximum values. Confidence interval, they have not given anywhere, but I think this seems that most of the salaries are somewhere around 60 to 87. The density, or this is the distribution. Like very few salaries are here, very few people are here. So, but my point is basically, you can see that this interval estimate is much more accurate and much more. So let's say if I'm going to US, I can see that, okay, I should not spend more money, or I should only save this much. I will get a better idea, right? So instead of, if I ask my friend and he says that my salary is, let's say, $70,000 per year, then fairly I might make mistake. Okay, he's getting 70, let's say I'm also getting 70, and I will buy this car or whatever. So I might make some mistake, right? So I can make, let's say, 80, or at the same time I can also make 60. So it's always a good idea to give a interval estimate, right? So you will come across all these interval estimate and all that once you keep thinking about these. Okay, so there is a problem here. So the problem is which of the following statements is true? So can you guys think on this? Think on this for some time. So this is a little tricky one. So think and then answer. So the question is which of the following statements is true? When the margin of error is small, the confidence level is high. When the margin of error is small, the confidence level is low. A confidence interval is a type of a point estimate. A population mean is an example of point estimate. So which of the answers is correct? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? Think and then answer. Don't jump to answers. If you're answering, I also want to give you the reasoning. Don't select one.
Population mean is point estimate. That is true.
Okay. What is your answer? A, B, C, D, E. Which one is that? So this is the type of questions you can expect.
When margin of error is small, the confidence level is low.
Yeah. What is the answer? A, B, C, D, E. You have to select one.
B.
So I hear B, one answer, any other answers. So let's see if how many
B.
correct answer.
B.
B, D, okay. And this is a tricky one. Think and answer. Okay, B. Okay.
D.
Yeah, you can type there. Okay. I'll type for you, Neeraj. D. Okay. So no right answers then. All these are wrong answers, guys. Okay. Don't tell me A, B, C, D, E. Everyone will say it. Don't do that, ringa roses. So the right answer is E. Kshitiz, why? What is your reasoning?
Okay. So for the first point, when the margin of error is small, the confidence level. So the margin of error helps us in deciding the upper and the lower bound of the confidence interval.
Okay.
But if we don't have the second parameter, which is the percentage
Correct.
of the confidence level.
Correct.
So first and two are both ruled out.
Okay. What about third?
So third one is clearly a point estimate. Point estimate doesn't refer to interval.
Correct. What about fourth?
Fourth is the population mean. This is an example of point estimate. Point estimate is to infer the population from a sample.
Correct. Good. Good answer. So one guy got correct. Everyone else got wrong. So confidence level is not affected by margin of error. So as you guys remember, these are two things, right? So there are 95% and there is margin of error is X plus or minus margin of error. If you guys remember this vote answer, I did 30 plus or minus 5%. So 5% and 95% have no relationship. Both are two things. In fact, two persons you can think, right? So as if you remember, I've discussed, right? So there is a political analyst. His margin of error could be 5 and he might be 50% confident. So that is confidence level. This is margin of error, which will give you confidence interval. Okay, interval and level. There are two words. Okay, if I go back to the definition, so a confidence interval. So this is your confidence interval is composed of three things: confidence level, statistics, and margin of error. Okay, there is no relationship or there is no combination that you can think. Your brain will tell you that this is low, that should be high. No, your brain is wrong there. These two are completely different things, right? So both of them should be given. So that is the answer. 1 and 2 are wrong. Now confidence interval cannot be a point estimate, right? So we told point estimate is a single value. Interval estimate is basically A less than X less than B. Now the fourth one is sample. So you always use a sample statistic, meaning that we always use a sample mean which is X bar, to infer the population mean, which is mu. Okay, so the population mean is mu. So we don't infer this, right? So this doesn't make sense. You don't have to infer this from anything. If you can find out this, then there is no point of doing all this. It's not even required. So that is the reason. So we always take something from statistics from the sample, and we infer it back to your population. Okay. So in case of this, the fourth one, the answer is sample mean. So sample mean is so the confidence level is not affected by the margin of error. When the margin of error is small, the confidence level can be low or high or anything in between. A confidence interval is a type of an interval estimate, not a type of a point estimate. A population mean is not an example of point estimate. A sample mean is an example of point estimate. Okay, guys, I think take some time, go through those slides. I see only one right answer. I think only one right answer I got. Yeah, that is your brain tricking you. If there is small, that should be high. That's how our brain works. But anyhow, so go through these slides, try to understand what is confidence level, confidence interval, margin of error, what is the statistic. This is like a very simple theory only. There is nothing much. So we'll do one more problem, you guys will understand. Is the answer clear? Is the explanation clear? Is the answer correct, E? Is it clear to all?
Yeah. Mani, can you explain once more that A and B?
So A and B is basically there is no relationship with margin of error and confidence level. So situation one, so let's say I say political analyst one says the percentage of the vote is 30%. Margin of error is plus or minus 6%. And this is your interval estimate. I'll ask him how much are you confident? He'll say 50% confident. Okay. There is political analyst 2. He will say that money, the political party A will get 29% plus or minus, let's say 15%, error 15%, margin of error is 15%. How much are you confident? He'll say 30%. This guy is useless, by the way. So let's say political analyst 3 comes and he'll say that, okay, money, my analysis is political party will get 30% plus or minus, let's say 8%. And I'll ask him, how much are you confident? He'll say, let's say 85%. Now the question will trick you that, okay, if this is small, this should be more. Of course, there is no relationship with these two guys. So this is not related. This is not related. And this is not related. So at 6%, you got 50%. At 15%, you got 30%, 8%. You got. It all depends on how well they do the study. So the confidence level, which is these numbers, and the margin of error, which are these numbers, 6%, 15%, 8%. There is no relationship. If one is low, it could be other can be low or high. If other is small, the other can be low or high. So there is no relationship.
Mani, is this a point interval for the 30%, 29%? I mean the point estimate.
So this is not point estimate, right? So I already have interval here. That is a statistic. This is called your statistic. So average. And this is your margin of error. Point interval is just this number 81. There is no plus or minus or anything. This is your point. So let's say political analyst 4 comes, who is like arrogant and very confident. He'll say that political party will get 35% votes exactly. Now this is a point estimate. Is it clear now?
Point estimate. Oh, okay. If there is a error margin, that we have an interval. Otherwise, it is a point estimate. Right?
Yeah. Plus or minus, if you add, it will become an interval, right? So this will become 24 till. This will become 24 till what is that? 36.
Okay. Got it.
This is just like 35. There is no number or anything. Only 35. He's confident. He's like futurist. Baba. Okay.
If I have to say the point estimate, what will be that?
Yeah, 35. I told you, right? But of course, this cannot be true, right? In real life, you know that. So a lot of factors are there. Just a number you'll give point estimate. Okay, any other questions, guys, before I start the next topic?
There was another one called confidence interval, right? So
yeah, confidence interval is basically all of these three things, right? So what is a confidence intervals? Confidence interval is your interval estimate plus your confidence level. So all of this is called your confidence level interval.
So in the can you give this relation to the previous example, that political one, confidence interval in that?
Yeah, so confidence interval there is the same thing only. So the confidence interval for P1, the political analyst one, is basically from 24% to 36 with 50% confidence level. All of these, this whole thing is your confidence interval. All of this, like plus. So this is your 50% is your confidence level. This 30% before was your statistic, and the margin of error was plus or minus 6. These three things, as you can see, right? Statisticians use confidence interval, which is an interval estimate. So this is also an interval estimate. Interval estimate, another form of interval estimate or form of interval estimate, to express precision and uncertainty associated with particular sampling method. A confidence interval is consists of three parts. Okay, confidence level, which is 50% here, a statistics, which is 30%, and a margin of error, which is 6%. Okay, if I expand this, it becomes like this. So political analyst one is giving me a confidence interval, which is a interval estimate, because it's a interval, right? So there is an interval here. So which is an interval estimate, i.e. So what is that? It is ranging from 24% to 36%, and he is 50% confident that this is where the real percentage of the votes for the political party will fall. Is it clear now? So this whole thing is your confidence interval.
Okay, got it. The complete thing together.
Don't get confused with confidence interval and confidence level. Don't get confused with this percentage and this percentage.
Okay.
Okay, so there is some more theory that you guys have to know. So this is where you will come across Z distribution and T distribution. Okay.
Oh.
So can you guys mute yourself if you don't have a question? Yeah, so this is where you will come across Z distribution and T distribution. Okay, so we know till now what we know normal distribution. Correct. So we know normal distribution. So this is one. So the other ones are basically we'll learn in this class is Z distribution. So other one is basically your T distribution. Okay. So similarly, normal distribution looks like this. We have some idea, right? So this is how it looks like, right? A Z distribution might look like this. Something like that, and a T distribution will look something like this. Right, so these are all sort of normal distributions only, but they have a different type of curve or a fitting. Okay, so I'll explain like why and when we will use what distribution. Okay, now let's say if we come back to our original problem. So our original problem was you have a sample. Okay, you have a sample You have a sample mean. You can find the sample mean. Yes, because let's say so the population is, let's say 1,000 people in Bangalore. Okay, how many sample? Let's say you take let's say 100. Sample size is 100. Okay, sample size is denoted by small n, so this is denoted by capital N. So sample mean, can you find? Yes, you can find. Let's say the salary is your average salary of the question is average salary of person in Bangalore. So this is a question that you're looking for. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, someone is pinging that they can't hear. Okay.
Seems like their issue.
Yeah, I think the internet fluctuating issue. Can you just check your internet once? Okay, so coming back to your problem. The problem was, I want to estimate or basically figure out what is the average salary of person in Bangalore. Okay. Now, what is the population of Bangalore? Let's say they are 1,000. Okay. Now, what is your capital in 1,000? Okay. What is that you're trying to estimate? You're trying to estimate mu. So mu denotes the population mean. Okay. Population statistic or a population parameter. How much sample size you took? Sample size you took is 100. Okay. How is it denoted? It is denoted by small n. Okay. Now, let's say this is your sample of 100 values. Okay, let's say this is a sample of 100 values. Now, can you find a sample mean X bar? Yes, because you have 100 values. Let's say 100 values. So let's say the salaries are 20,000, 21,000, 25,000, 21,000, something like that. You can find the mean. So let's say sum of all of that divided by 100. So let's say you get X bar. Okay. So there are two situations, right? So there are two situations. So the situation one is, so the situation one is, you know X bar, so which is a sample mean, and you also know sigma. What is sigma? Sigma is basically standard deviation. So sigma is standard deviation of the population. Okay, you know standard deviation of population. And what is that you are trying to infer or figure out? You're trying to infer population parameter, which is basically average, which is mu. Okay, mu is that you're trying to figure out. Now, what is the other situation? Other situation is, you always know X bar because that is your sample mean, and you do not know sigma, which is that you do not know sigma, which is the sigma of population. Then also you are trying to estimate mu. Okay. Now, when you do not know sigma, which is the which is the standard deviation of population, you will make use of small s, which is the standard deviation of sample. Standard deviation of sample. So there are two formulas for that. So here you will use z values. Here you will use t values. So we'll come to that. So what is the first scenario? The first scenario is, money, I'm trying to figure out the average salary of the population in Bangalore. What I know, I took a sample of 100. I know the sample mean, which is X bar. I also know sigma, which is the standard deviation of population. I also know sigma, which is the standard deviation of these 1,000. Now you might ask a question, Mani, how will you know the sigma? You can figure out from a lot of other, there are many ways you can figure out. So one way is basically, you're doing this study for, let's say 2018, let's say 2019, let's say 2020, right? So there are many ways. So you can say that you can use the historical sigma. So let's say the sigma, the average salary for sigma, basically the standard deviation of salary in 2018 was, let's say 30. You can use that here, right? So you can use that as your previous value or as a rough estimate. So that is one way of saying that I already know the standard deviation of population. No money in real life, most of the times you will not know sigma. Then what are we going to do? Then we are going to use the standard deviation in this sample, which is called small s. Okay, standard deviation of sample is denoted by small s. So let's say if you do not know the standard deviation of the population, then we are going to use the standard deviation of the sample. Okay, are these two situations clear? Any questions on this?
But in both cases, we are trying to find the mean of the population, right?
Yeah, mu.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this is where we'll use our interval estimate, all the things that we have learned so far. A point estimate cannot be expected to provide the exact value of the population parameter. An interval estimate can be computed by adding and subtracting a margin of error. So this is basically a point estimate plus or minus margin of error. The purpose of interval estimate is to provide information about how close the point estimate is to the value of the real parameter. Okay, so this is what we have seen so far, x bar plus or minus margin of error. Okay, so in order to develop an interval estimate of a population mean, the margin of error must be computed either using the population standard deviation sigma or the sample standard deviation, which is smallest. Sigma is rarely known exactly, but often a good estimate can be obtained based on the historical data or other information. Now, the first example that I'm referring to is basically called sigma known case. So what it means, I'm trying to find mu with the help of x bar and with the help of sigma, and I'm trying to come up with an interval estimate. Okay, so this part you can ignore. So the formula comes to x bar. So let's say x bar, which is your sample mean, plus or minus margin of error, which is given by z alpha by 2. Okay, z alpha by 2. So this is your alpha by 2 multiplied by sigma, which is a population parameter, divided by square root of n. Okay, so with this you can come up with a interval estimate of mu when you already know sigma. So this is the formula for figuring out the interval estimate of mu when you already know the sigma. So what are the terms? So x bar stands for sample mean. So 1 minus alpha is the confidence coefficient. So we'll come to that. So z alpha by 2 is the z value providing an area of alpha by 2 in the upper tail of standard normal probability distribution. Now I hope you guys know some of these terms. So standard normal distribution, I hope you guys know. So standard normal distribution, if you remember, it is basically which has the mean at 0, and you have one standard deviation to the right, one standard deviation towards the left. Okay, so that is your standard normal deviation. So we'll discuss about your upper tail, and we'll discuss about your what is this alpha by 2. What is your sigma? So sigma is the population standard deviation. What is small n? Small n is the sample size. Okay, so you guys are familiar with this. You guys are familiar with this. You guys are familiar with this. And you guys are also familiar with standard normal probability distribution. So only things that are new to you is basically 1 minus alpha and z alpha by 2. Okay, so we'll do a problem. You guys will understand how to interpret that. Okay, so let me show you one problem. Okay, so let's solve this problem so that you guys will understand. So Discount Sounds is a company which has 260 retail outlets throughout United States. Okay, the firm is evaluating a potential location for a new outlet based in part on the mean annual income of the individuals in the marketing area of the new location. Okay, so they are trying to find the mean annual income of the individuals in the marketing area of new location. A sample size of n equal to 36 was taken. The sample mean income is basically $41,100. The population is not believed to be highly skewed, which means you can assume that the population is normally distributed. The population standard deviation is estimated to be 4,500. They don't clearly know. They are estimating it to be 4,500. And the confidence coefficient to be used in the interval estimate. They are also giving this along with the question. The confidence coefficient to be used in the interval estimate is 0.95. Okay, so can you guys break it down? What are the things that are given to you? What is that you are trying to figure out here? So what is the sample size? The sample size is given as n equal to 36. Okay, what is the sample mean? X bar
41,100.
So X bar is given as 41,100. Anything else? 100.
Sigma also 4,500.
Population standard deviation, which is given as 4,500. 4,500. If you go back to the formula, there are unknowns. This also they have given. They have given the confidence coefficient. The confidence coefficient to be used in the interval estimate is 0.95. Okay, 0.95. Okay. So let's see how we can interpret these, and let's see how we can find the Z value and use this formula. Okay. So the way you can figure that out is, so what is that? 95% of the sample mean. So 0.95 is basically 0.95. You can write it as 0.95. You can write it as 95%. Okay, 95%. So 95% of the sample means that can be observed are within plus or minus 1.96 sigma x of the population mu. Okay. Now, where does this 1.96 come? So this 1.96 is your Z alpha by 2. Okay. So alpha is basically okay, 1 minus alpha is basically given as 0.95. Okay. Now what it means is 1 minus alpha is basically 0.95. So the value of alpha is basically here is basically 0.05. Okay, 0.05. Now what is alpha by 2? Alpha by 2 is basically equal to 0.025. Okay. Now the Z value, there is a Z table. So if you search online, Z table, you will find this table. So there is a table called Z table. So the 1.96 I'm getting from here. Okay, so this is a Z table. I'll show you like how to interpret this. Where is our conclusion? Okay, so Z alpha by 2 is basically 0.025. So alpha by 2 is basically 0.025. Z alpha by 2 is basically Z value for 0.025. If you go and see in the table, you will get a value which is equal to 1.96. 1.96. So the answer will become, so basically, what is your X bar? X bar is basically 41.1. So 41.1K, $1,000 plus or minus the margin of error. Since they have given 95% confidence quotient, okay, we will calculate all this. Then you will come up with Z alpha by 2. The Z alpha by 2 value that you got is basically 1.96. Okay. Then multiplied by what is the sigma? Sigma is basically 4,500 divided by square root of n. So n is basically 36. Okay. If you compute all this and you figure out all that, you'll get an interval estimate of 39,630 to 42,570. We are 95% confident that this interval contains the population mean. Okay, so the only things that are new for you is these values, which is basically your 1.96 or how did I get 1.64 when it is 90%. So that is basically there are 3-4 values that you can remember. Okay, so these 3 values are basically for 95% you can remember that Z alpha by 2 is basically 1.96. for 90%, you can remember that Z alpha by 2 is basically 1.645. Okay. So this is considered as your confidence coefficient. Okay. So we will refer your Z table and the value that you will get is 1.96 and remaining everything else is your formula. Okay. Is it clear? So let's say if you're working with this one. So let's say if you're working with 95% confidence. Someone is unmute. What is that? Yeah, so let's say if you're working with 95% confidence interval, okay, 95% confidence coefficient, okay, 95% confidence coefficient, 95% confidence coefficient. The Z alpha by 2 is basically 1.96. Okay, most of the questions will ask you 95. Sometimes they will also ask you 90%. Okay, then you can remember these two values, which is 1.64. 1.64. What are these values? These values are Z alpha by 2. So these are the Z alpha by 2s. And what are these values? These are your confident coefficients. Any other value, let's say 86 or let's say 82 or let's say 81. For these values, you have to refer to the Z table. Okay. Generally, if you remember these two values, it is more than enough. Generally, they don't ask. Sometimes they don't even give you this percentage. So you have to assume 95%. Okay. What it means is 5% error is fine. So 1 minus alpha, what alpha means here is 5% error. Okay. 5% error. So error meaning, so if you come back to this answer, what it means is, so the population mean, okay, the interval estimate of mu is basically between $39,630 to $42,570, and we are 95% confident that this interval contains the population mean. Okay, so this is that 95%. Is it clear? Any questions?
Is it not possible to find the point estimate of the population mean? Is it always we get population mean in terms of interval estimate?
So let's say if you find the point estimate, now your answer is correct, or is it better to go with interval estimate? Which one is better?
Yeah, it is better to go with the interval estimate. I just want to understand, is there any way to find the point point estimate of the mu, not the interval estimate?
So what is the point estimate? What value will you take? There is only one value, right? So that is basically your X bar.
Yeah, correct.
Right? So X bar is your point estimate, plus or minus.
That is for sample.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if you want to go with your point estimate, what is that you're estimating? You're estimating mu, right? So what information do you have? You want to find out mu. You have sigma, you have small n, and you are assuming, or let's say they are saying 95% confidence coefficient. Okay, so these are the values you have. So what is the point estimate you will have? The sample size is basically, let's say 100 or 36. So in this case, I think it is 36. Now, what is the point estimate that you can give for mu? The point estimate that you can give for mu is only X bar. That is the point estimate you can give. What is the interval?
Okay.
What is the interval estimate you can give? The interval estimate you can give is this one. And point estimate you guys can forget, because it is useless in my opinion, because no way you can hit this answer, right? The mean, sample's mean will never be equal to your population mean, right? It is always useful, and it is always ideal to give an interval estimate along with some confidence level, right? So this has a major chance of hitting than estimating that the point estimate of is exactly equal to sample mean. That is very, very rare. I wouldn't say rare, but there are very less chances. If your the sampling technique that you have done is not so appropriate of the population, then there is a high chance that you will find that this X bar and capital mu will be far off, like there will be a major difference. But if you instead give me an interval estimate, then there are very high chances that one of the value, the mu will fall in this interval. There is a very high chance. So that chance is generally given by your confidence interval, confidence level. So which is basically your 95%. Is it clear? Any questions?
Okay, Mani, it's clear. Thank you.
Mani, Z alpha by 2 we used because it is like two tail, no?
Yeah, I'll come to that. If I explain like that, nobody will understand.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll come to that in a proper way. So I don't have slides here, but in the next class, I'll explain one by one. But for now, if you guys are not clear why alpha by 2 and all that, what is one tail, upper tail, all that, I'll explain in the next coming classes. Okay, so we'll understand how to properly approach what is one tail, what is two tail. It's more useful in hypothesis testing than here, but this also you can say is sort of hypothesis testing. But anyhow, I'll explain more in the next class. What is one tail, two tail, alpha by 2, what is that, all that. Okay, guys, I think maybe T distribution we can take in the next class. There are some theory. So in most cases, a sample size of n equal to 30 is adequate if the population distribution is highly skewed or contains outliers. A sample size of 50 or more is recommended. Okay. Now you might ask, Mani, all this, where is this applicable? All of this is applicable in business analyst, data analyst, in all those particular roles where typically in every day you don't build machine learning models, but what you do is you sort of estimate all this, right? So this is a good problem for a company to solve, right? So why is that? Because they figured out this is the interval estimate the data scientist has given them. So based on that, they can give you the salaries, like they can give you 38,000, or let's say they can give you 40,000. Let's say if they don't do this study, if they don't have any analyst or let's say any decision data scientist, they might come up and say, let's say we are paying you 50,000, right? So 50,000 is not the average salary there. 50,000 is actually way beyond the interval of the average salary. They are paying more than required. At the same time, they don't want the employees to suffer. So they should not pay less than, let's say, 35,000, right? That is also bad because they didn't do any statistical study. Their decisions are not data driven. So just with this simple formula, a data scientist can estimate that I'm 95% confident that the population mean, which is the average salary for this marketing team, is between this interval. So based on that, you can make a lot of decisions for that business. Okay, so this gives you a more better data-driven decisions. If you see companies saying we are making data-driven decisions, this is what it means. Right? So let's say if you are launching a new toothpaste, let's say if you price it at, let's say 100 rupees or let's say 110, nobody is going to buy, right? That is not a data-driven decision. Now, how will you make a data-driven decisions? You will go to the market, look at all the competitors, look at their price, estimate that, make some estimations or inferences. So let's say you take a sample of, let's say Pepsodent and Colgate, let's say some other paste. You cannot take all the pastes in the world, right? So I mean, like at least in India, of course you can, but let's not do that. Then you can take a sample and you can come up with the interval estimate, and you can say that the average price, so the costliest paste is, let's say, Sensodyne, and the cheapest paste is, let's say, Pepsodent or something. So the average price, you can tell to the marketing team or the sales team that we should position our average price between, let's say, 80 rupees to 60 rupees to 80 rupees. So that's a fair data-driven decision. So when you go to the market, you will not fail completely. Before you went with 100 rupees, nobody bought it because it is very expensive and you are not giving anything extra. At the same time, if you go to the market with, let's say, 5 rupees or 10 rupees or let's say 15 rupees or 30 rupees, you might see a lot of demand, but your paste quality might not be so on par, right? So you will not be able to make some profit there, right? So it is always good to make data-driven decisions. So this is where a data scientist will come into picture, and this is where his knowledge of statistics is going to help in making these decisions. Now, this is not ML at all. This is just pure statistics, but this is, you guys can see how it is helping companies make data-driven decisions. Okay, so I'll close the class here today. There are 3 minutes. If you guys have any other questions from before or here, we'll discuss upper tail, lower tail, all that, Z, all T, alpha, all that. How do we understand better? But for now, I hope this formula is clear to some extent. I hope you guys can understand how we can estimate a population parameter with the help of sample. So with this, I'll close the class here today. If you have any other questions, I'll stick around, or else.
Mani, I have one general question. Like I have reinstalled the Anaconda in my system, but I'm unable to launch the Anaconda Jupyter through Anaconda Navigator. It's keep on looping.
Yeah, I think you guys are facing a lot of issues with Anaconda. Okay, I have a simple solution. The simple solution is, you guys heard about Google Colab? Have you heard about Google Colab?
Yes.
Okay. So this is basically running in your cloud meaning on Google servers somewhere in California or let's say Singapore. So this is similar to your Jupyter notebook and similar interface. Now the good thing is you don't have to run into these issues with Google Jupyter notebook, pandas and all that. Most of the packages are already pre-installed. If you want to install also, you can install similar to your Conda. All you have to do is pip install and the package name. Why is this not coming? So I would suggest you to guys to start using this. But there is one problem here. How do you read the data? So Pandas is already installed there. So this is where it is connecting. And it will give you a virtual machine in the cloud which runs Google Colab. So you can run this. And if you're running into a lot of errors, don't waste a lot of time there. So this you can write it as, let's say, first.ipnb. Let's say, now the problem comes here is how do you read the data? Now reading, there are two ways. So generally that is the reason I give you URL. So that is where you can directly read from the URL. So let's see if you do this. So let's say, okay, so let's say if I want to install this is already installed. Okay, so let's say if I want to install Keras. So already installed. So most of the packages and all the headaches that you're running into with Anaconda, you can forget those and start using Jupyter Google Colab. Now, how do you download it locally? Let's say if you want to give it to someone, you can go here, click here, download.ipynb. You can download here. This is here. Now the best part is it will be present in your Google Drive. Now if you go here, so this is here, right? So you will never lose this, even if your laptop crashes or anything. If you log into your Google Drive, so this Google Colab will be here always. Okay, so you can download it or open it, Google Collaborate. So if you're running into a lot of errors, I see that a lot of guys are discussing about errors with Pandas and Anaconda and all. I would suggest you guys to give this a try. Okay, let me know if you're having any issues with this, or else we can go back to fixing Anaconda. So what is the error you're getting?
I'm not getting error, but it is like loading the. I have kept it for 3 days. Also, it's not loading. Like it's just looping.
3 days is bad idea, right? So you should stop it.
No, I tried for some time, but it was not working. Like, finally, I fed up and I just kept it for the access.
Are you on laptop or phone?
A laptop.
Yeah, can you share your screen? Are you allowed to share?
No, I am in phone, but I installed in laptop actually. I'm not able to share.
Okay, so how can I help you then? Okay, so you said you reinstalled already. Okay.
Yes.
I'm assuming you're on Windows.
Yes, Windows 10.
Okay, what is the problem? Did it install properly? Can you try one more time uninstalling and installing?
Yeah, I have tried multiple times, but it's the same case. Like it successfully installs, but launching it is not launching. None of the application in that Anaconda Navigator, it's launching.
Yeah, sometimes it helps if you run it as an administrator. Right click and open as administrator.
Yeah, try that because I'm a little bit unfamiliar with Windows now. Try running it as administrator. If you're running into a lot of issues, I would suggest everyone to start looking into Google Colab.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah, Google Colab, like opening file locally is what you should upload to the drive and then open, is it?
Yeah, you can upload if you already have a Jupyter notebook, you can upload, or you can directly upload from GitHub also. So let's say github.com/.
This bank.csv file, if I want to read locally, then it should be in Google Drive, right? I cannot read from my machine, either website or.
Yeah, what? Sorry, I didn't understand.
This is a CSV file.
CSV should be online. There is one more way you can upload also. There is that is called import IO, then files equal to io.upload.
Can you present the screen?
Sorry?
Screen is not present.
Oh yeah, sorry. There is a way you can upload a CSV file also. I'll show you maybe if you guys are interested in Google Colab. I'll show you like how to upload the CSV file. So I've been using this from a long time, so I feel this is better because a lot of times my Anaconda crashes and it's a headache, right? So the only thing you need is internet connection here, which is fine. And if you don't have internet connection, you can download this and you have Anaconda already, so you can run it locally also. So this gives you a lot of flexibility in my opinion, and it is free, so you don't have to worry about that. The best part here is you can connect a free GPU. So if you go to runtime and change settings, not only GPU, there is TPU also. So you can save. So let's say if you're working with machine learning or deep learning, so this is like free. You can directly work with this. There is a GPU also, so you can directly work with the GPU, and if you are interested, you can also work with a TPU. So the TPU is like, I think, even faster than GPU. Okay, so let's say if you want to set up GPU and TPU in your laptop, it is not possible. By the way, TPUs are not available. Only Google has that. So these advantages are there with Google Colab, and it is always present in your drive. You will not lose it. You will not delete the file. So some good advantages are there. The only problem is IO, which is input and output. Maybe in the next class, I'll show you how to input and import and install packages. After that, you can, in my opinion, you can ignore Anaconda because I've seen a lot of people having issues in this class. So that's fine. So what I wanted to do is, any other questions, guys?
Mani, I have a question for yesterday's class regarding the test and train data. You said for time series we cannot use random sampling on frequency, because in time series if I have a data for 5 years and I will be taking a proportion of 30-70, and if the 30% of data if the quantity of the if the value is high, and the rest 70% of the data if the value is less, so if then the output is won't be perfect, right?
What do you mean by high?
For example, if I have a production quantity for 5 years data for every month, the dispatch quantity of the company.
Okay. You mean that the dispatch quality is increasing every year?
Yeah, for first 1 year it is good, and the rest 2 years it's down.
Yeah, I understood. So that is, we'll discuss more in time series, maybe after 1 month. But the simple answer is you actually transform that. So what happens is there are some transformations. So you are increasing the dispatch salary, whatever is increasing, right? So what we do is we subtract from t minus 1. So you subtract the value from the previous day. So what happens is the curve which looks like increasing. Let's say this is your dispatch. So let's say if it is increasing like this. So what you do is you transform this into this. The way you transform is this is your, let's say, 1st January and this is 2nd January. You keep on subtracting the values. So 2nd January you'll subtract from 1st, 3rd January you'll subtract from 2nd, 4th January you'll subtract from 3rd, and 5th from 3rd. So what happens is your curve will come like this.
Okay.
Then you can take this part as training and this part as this. So we will discuss more on that. But the key idea you have to remember from test and train is this should be sequential. So you cannot do like here is train and randomly here. That is wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
That will give you completely wrong answer. There are techniques. We'll discuss more on that.
Okay, Mani.